Well, hi there, kids. It's once again time for the internet's favorite movie centric list making podcast, 1021. I am one of your hosts, Josh, joined with me, as always, by the person living on land that cooks itself, Jen.
Wait, just to be clear, I'm pretty sure that that's like half of the nation right now.
Yeah, yeah.
So someone posted a great meme to really encapsulate this, and it was, if you've ever played Mario, where the sun in the sky is trying to basically kill you. That's the experience that most of us are having right now. So yeah, I feel
Yes.
that. I absolutely feel that.
And summer's only just begun.
Yeah, that's the crazy part, isn't it? Summer has only
We've
just
already had a category 5 hurricane in the water there. I mean, it made landfall in the U.S. like Cat 1 something, but not just the fact that it was able to get that powerful in
it's
July.
it's a little crazy. Yeah, it's a little crazy. And for us, the hottest months in the tropics don't happen until late August and September. So those are our sort of hottest months. And so if it's this hot now, I don't even want to know what's going to happen then. Ay, ay, ay.
Uh,
We'll see.
uh, Bring on that ice age, right?
Yeah, something. We'll see. We'll see. My little cousin had come over the other day and asked if he could. He said, "You are the only people that I know that have a freezer big enough for me to sit in. Can I sit in it?" That's how hot it was. So yeah,
Sounds good to me.
yeah. I wish I could fit in it.
But weather aside, even though it is the weatherest of weathers, whether the weather be hot, right?
Always, there's always something. Yeah, I feel like this is the reason that weather is the small talk of choice. It's because there's always something to talk about, always something to extrapolate, Oh, it was raining the other day. Now I know why old people spend so much time actually talking about the weather. Yeah, there's a lot of it, amazingly.
Yeah.
This is it.
Uh, it's been uh you know what? We could wax poetic about jet streams and hurricanes and all that stuff all night long, but that's not what this show is. So
No, and honestly, this tonight's episode, much like what we're talking about, is such an it's interesting because I am not sure that going forward into this year, the movies that we are about to talk about tonight, that they're going to pan out to be what we think they're going to be. Um, I have okay. I'll give you an example when we can get to it. Um, but there are some movies that are on this list which did already get released, and I was sure that they were going to be game changer movies, just absolutely phenomenal. And they were terrible, or they fizzled in such a way that it was like, oh, is this it? And yeah, boy, 2024 is the year of great expectations, but so little in return. I am not liking 2024 in entertainment. In entertainment,
well,
not
hopefully
not
that's
great.
not a predictor of
A portent of things to come.
yeah, yeah. Although I do imagine at some point stuff that happens this year will be made into movies that could possibly be up for awards, depending on, of course, how well they're done.
Hey, there
Because
is that.
we all know how much Hollywood loves to do based on a true story.
Yeah, there is that. Yeah, we're definitely making plenty of news to make movies for the future. So
Maybe that's what the whole that's the conspiracy. It's like everything's happening because Hollywood needs content.
I gotta say something else about this list too, which is sort of it didn't strike me until I was like knee deep in deciding what I thought would be an award winner. But I watch so much horror content, and there's some really good stuff out right now. I mean, really good stuff. I just watched a movie called Exuma, which is a Korean movie, so caveat, you have to pay attention because you got to read subtitles, but it was truly exceptional. Like, it was scary. And then last night we watched a movie called Immaculate, which I thought was going to be, just another take on the Catholic Church, blah blah blah. No, it was, of course, that was a part of it, but it was absolutely on fire. Like, it was great. I Suspense wise, it was phenomenal. I never saw the ending actually coming. And it made me sad putting this list together because I know that horror movies, unless you're talking about Parasite, really never make it into the list of potential award winners. And as I was putting this whole list together, I was like, well, none of the movies that I really like are going to make it to this list. So, that was really sad. I wish I understood the reason behind that, but it is what it is.
I took a look at the list of movies that I've seen that have come out from this year,
Hmm.
and well, honestly, I haven't really seen a whole lot of movies that have come out this year. I think it was like six. Seen
Oh,
six
wow.
movies that come out this year. Uh, I know. I'm surprising myself. I don't know what the issue is with the turnaround time getting some of this stuff to streaming, or maybe I'm just so checked out of
Yeah.
what the new releases are that I'm not really. I have my watch list set up at letterbox.com. Give us money. And I pay attention. I try to pay attention, but I don't think there's just all that much on it from this year that excites me enough to actively pay attention when it's streaming.
Yeah, I have to say that this year, I the strongest movies, the strongest content for entertainment has really been concentrated in uh streaming services, number 1. And number 2, a lot of the really good content that I've seen come out has been series related. So movies haven't really sort of kept pace with series related, or I shouldn't say series related, but it hasn't kept pace with series in terms of just the quality of material that is sort of out there. And that's interesting to me because we're definitely in like a transition where we've all moved away from cable because cable is insanely expensive, and people are moving into, okay, well, I'll just grab a couple of streaming services here and there. That gets expensive over time too. So some people with certain services see certain things, and then other people with other services see other things, and we have become very fragmented when it comes to, okay, how are we consuming our media, whether it's movie or series or whatever. And really, consolidating where you find your new movies, it comes down to Fandango at Home, which used to be Vudu, um, Amazon Prime, and one or two, like Paramount oftentimes has, first release stuff, and so does Disney. But other than that, you're sort of stuck until something makes it to Netflix, until something makes it to one of the services that you have. You might not see that movie. You might not see it for a year or two or whatever. And yeah, that's really interesting because that's not the way that it used to be, that you would have cable or a network and everything would come to HBO or Stars or whatever. Eventually, you would see it. And usually it was within that first year. Now, you have to have the right service in order to see the movie that you're wanting to see. And that is definitely a big change. So we'll have to see where things go from here. I don't know.
I think case in point, If you remember that movie, If
Yes, yes.
I saw it, I was just you know doing some stuff on the computer, and I was like, I'm going to put on a movie while I do some stuff. Went to Paramount. Wasn't expecting to find much, but I was like, oh, this one's streaming now.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'll check that out. Um, did I have an interest in seeing it in theater? I mean, if I felt like going out and if it was playing at a convenient time, I have my AMC pass, that's fine. But I wasn't gonna like make that a scheduled thing, you know?
Hmm.
I mean, Deadpool and Wolverine, that's coming out in at the time of this recording in like 2 weeks. And yeah, I've got tickets for that already. I've had tickets for like a month. Of course, I'm going to go see that opening day because that's an event.
Right.
Um, other than that, even though my list is made up of like stuff that hasn't come out yet, mostly, uh, only one or two have me so compelled to even keep track actively as far as release dates go.
Right.
So that's where we're sitting right now.
Well, so far this year, the top 10 box office hits uh are none of the movies that, well, actually maybe one. Uh there's one cuz I have a movie in here that I think actually will be um considered. But for the most part, every single movie that is in this top 10 minus maybe one or possibly two, I don't think they're Academy Award winning. I don't think that they'll be up for nomination because they don't fit the criteria. Um, Possibly no, I don't even think that one is. So, I mean, like these are not best picture candidates. Um, and that's a problem because I think I mentioned this before the podcast, but I mean, we're already in July. And so unless we're going to get like a rush of content toward the end of the year, boy, yeah, this has not been a good year in American cinema. It just has not. And it's sad because there are some movies that have been released, but they've been released either directly to streaming or they've been released and they've, flown way under the radar with, very few screens that they've opened to. And so people don't hear about them. And, they're good movies, but they won't get any attention because they can't. So, yeah, I don't know. It's going to be interesting.
Well, with all that being said, I think now would be the perfect time to tell everybody specifically what our lists are about this evening, and that is what we think next year's top Oscar nominees for Best Picture are going to be. The category calls for 10 nominees for Best Picture, and we're going to give our best educated guess as to what those nominees are going to be. And we say educated guess because mentioned already, not all of the movies have been released so far. Not even close, and it's not even Oscar season. So I thought we should put on our thinking caps and do a little bit of not necessarily detective work, but some guesswork, some educated guesswork to see what we think will be recognized at next year's Academy Awards, which, as we've mentioned already, who knows?
Yeah.
Because sometimes he's like, I never in a million years would have said Nomadland. I don't even know what that is. And then
Mm,
I watched it and I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But it's one of those movies that's not going to get a ton of press because it's not you know, material for huge ticket sales. It's not going to get the recognition until the Academy says, hey guys, this over here, this is a good movie. You should
Right.
probably watch this movie."
Right. Right.
And yeah, and I try to watch them all, but sometimes it's difficult. Anyway, so that's the list. That's what our lists are based on tonight. So, uh, who should start us off with our top
Well,
five or bottom fives?
I'll start. Um, Now, just to be super clear, I made my list for movies that I thought would make best picture category. So that means that didn't include animated movies because they typically go into a totally different category. I mean, there have been some exceptions in the past, but by and large, animated features get their own category, and we don't generally tend to stick them uh, in the best picture category. So I just wanted you to know that because, like, there are some movies that I think, from an animated standpoint, really could be they could be great. And they could definitely they've got everything that they would need in order to be a best picture, but they are animated, therefore they probably are excluded. So okay, so I'll start with The Beekeeper. I don't know, and tell me if you have seen any of these. I did see The Beekeeper. Cabrini is my number 9. My number 8 is the Bob Marley story One Love. My number 7 is Fly Me to the Moon, and my number 6 is The Joker Folie à Deux. So those are my bottom 5. Have you seen or heard of any of those?
I've heard of all of them. I haven't seen any of them.
Okay. Beekeeper is out and it is quite good. The other ones I think are, well, Cabrini I believe is out. Yeah, that's already out. I didn't see that ahead of time. Um, but the other ones I believe they haven't been released yet. I'm going off of who I know is in them, what I know of the production and the story. Because, like, some stories just sort of, that the Academy loves that type of story. So that's how I kind of chose what they were. So what are your bottom 5?
My bottom five. I wish I could. I wish I could better explain some of these, not because of time constraints, but because I really don't know what they are. I just you take a look at a cast, you take a look at a synopsis, and sometimes you get the feeling, oh, that's like possibly Oscar bait.
Yeah.
So, with that in mind, my number 10 is The Piano Lesson.
Hmm.
Uh, my number 9 is Queer.
Okay.
My number 8 is The Nickel Boys. My number 7, and I thought this would do a whole lot better, by the way, at the box office, but Furiosa, Mad Max Saga. My number 6 is Dune Part 2. And by the way, these are not in any particular order, as usual. For me, if it's in my bottom 5, it's either because I don't have enough to say about them, or no, there's no or. It's generally because I don't have it in me to expand on why it's on my list. So
Right.
I keep the things that make me verbose in the top 5,
Right.
rather than the bottom. That's why I know some of you out there are like, Dune Part 2, like one of the greatest movies ever made. It's not even in the
Well,
top 5. Well, yeah,
so specifically speaking of Dune Part 2, I have plenty to say about that, and it is on my list. So you're safe.
I imagined it would be.
Yes.
So let's get into our actual top 5s, and you can start us off with your number 5.
Okay, my number 5 is a movie called Reagan, which I think will have topic aside. Okay, because you know, like I was a child of the 80s, and honestly, Reagan's footprint was all over it. In a way that, as an adult, I, sort of, God, what, like, talk about origins of, some really difficult things to tackle now. But as a film, it has all the makings of what I think Hollywood really loves, which is sort of this nostalgic, retrospective view of the past, and a kind of glamorizing of historic events that we have experienced, whether it's for good, or whether it gave us not good things. Whatever it is, we tend to like to pick the pieces out that we can sensationalize, and then that makes good drama. And it does feel like Reagan kind of has all of those pieces put together. It's an interesting, I mean, personally, I think that this is a very interesting production altogether, because there are some pieces in here which are going to, I just think they're going to be controversial, but at the same time, that's part of what we love in these movies, right? We absolutely love the idea that that we love the idea that we can, like, look back at something like Iran Contra and go, "Oh yeah, remember when that happened?" And we'll find some piece to latch onto, and it becomes a huge drama event. Hollywood loves that, and yeah, that's why I think that Reagan will definitely make it in there. I haven't heard too much about it though, other than, like, um I haven't seen the actual official trailer. I know it's out, but I haven't seen the actual official trailer. I do know that Dennis Quaid plays Ronald Reagan. Um and I know John Voight is in it. And I feel like that is sort of going to make it super interesting anyway. Um and they have, like, yeah, they do a lot of really interesting things in this film. I think it's going to be quite fascinating to watch. Also, because it's one of their own, Reagan was actually a Hollywood star before he was president. And that's another reason that I think it will definitely be put up for nomination. It just has sort of all of the big ticket ticks checked off. So my number 5 is Reagan. And when does this movie come out? It comes out in theaters August 30th. So not too far away.
So it's kind of not quite kicking off the Academy Award season. Sometimes it's referred, but
It's right on the cusp.
it's releasing late enough for it to be on people's minds.
Right, right. Yeah.
Although
And
personally, I see it as more of it's probably going to get nominations for acting. I don't know about Best Picture, but
yeah, that's a good point. I don't know. I just know that it checks all the boxes. It every box that I can think of that makes an Academy Award winning Best Picture, that sort of, like, needs to be there. It's there. It needs to, like, I think there'll be plenty of crossover. It will be nominated for Best Actor. It'll be nominated for Best many things, but it also will, I think, make a Best Picture piece. We'll see.
okay. Well, good pick. Good pick. Smart pick. My number 5 is almost the same thing as far as subject matter,
Hmm.
but about a completely different person. Uh, my number 5 is Nosferatu.
Oh, now see, that is a horror movie, and it does seem to me like that would possibly be the only exception to the rule of we just don't usually nominate horror movies for Best Picture.
Exactly. I think it's going to be a unique nominee. It, for the most part, has a pretty youngish cast, but one of the really hard selling points for me, one of the things that really brought it to my attention was the fact that it is uh, written and directed by Robert Eggers
Right. Who did The Witch
and The Northman
and The
and
Northman
The Lighthouse.
and The Lighthouse? Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of what he's. Eggers is very famous for his very stylistic his stylistic style, that's redundant. He's famous for his ability to bring stylistic cinema to life in a way that is often stark and really striking. I mean, there's still shots in The Northman that kind of haunt me because they were just so well executed. Really good.
It's
That's a good
these
choice.
things that and what was that movie called that came out last year? Pretty Things with the Emma Watson,
Oh, yeah, something like that.
something like that. But I think because of that movie and all of the acclaim that it received, this is the movie that's going to be nominated. The style, whatever that happens to be, is going to be a major reason for it,
Right.
in my opinion. Like I said, it's got a pretty good cast with Bill Skarsgård, Willem Dafoe, Nicholas Holt. Um,
Lily Rose.
it's Lily Rose, yeah, and the yoga hoser herself. Um, yeah, I had made a Kevin Smith reference already in this episode, which I didn't think was going to happen. So
Good job. Good job. I knew you'd figure
I'm
it out.
pretty awesome that way. So Nosferatu is my number 5.
I've seen a lot of advanced press material on this with like a lot of different shots that or well still images from shots in the movie. And it definitely comports with the Eggers style of cinema. It also, I think, seems like the story might be a little bit more interesting than just the standard Dracula story. So that's something to look forward to because it definitely has a couple of interesting kind of twists and turns, which, yeah, I think could be interesting. I just think it's going to be good. All right. I am, let's see. Okay, so I'm going to move on with my number 4 pick. I chose Wicked. I okay, so Wicked is actually coming out uh very shortly, like in the next week or so. And it's actually coming out at the same time that I think another movie who had made my list, and I absolutely believe it will get a Best Picture nomination. Um but Wicked, I think, will get a Best Picture nomination because it is one of the few movies this year that builds on the musical foundation, which Best Picture movies tend to love. Um, there's always a small swath, but a swath of movies that are chosen from this. And the Broadway production of Wicked is it's hard to even explain how good it is. It's just phenomenally fabulous. And it seems like they really went to great pains to make the movie as good with cinema adaptation as the Broadway play itself. So I feel like I've got really high hopes for this, but my like or dislike for the movie aside, I also think that this movie ticks a bunch of boxes, which will put it in contention for a best movie nomination, for a best film nomination. The thing that mm, gives me slight pause is we have really big people in this movie, like Ariana Grande. um Jeff Goldblum is the wizard, which I think is going to be great. um so there are definitely some bigger voices happening here, but I don't. And so is Michelle Yeoh is in this movie too, and she's just been on fire. Like every single thing that she touches ends up being unbelievably great. And um if you watch the trailer for this, it kind of comes together in a way that makes you feel very hopeful about the film itself. It does seem like it's, yeah, going to be really good. Now, the other thing about this is Wicked is being, what's a good way to say this? Um Wicked is well, see, I shouldn't say anything because I feel like it's going to be spoilery. There's something interesting about the way that they are are doing Wicked, which is sort of unconventional, and that I think also actually might make for an interesting uh, choice for the Academy. I guess I can say this: it's Wicked. The beginning, the foundational material is part 1, and then part 2, Wicked part 2, is set to be released in 2025. So it's a two-part series, and yeah, I think that's going to be super interesting. So okay, my number 4 is Wicked. Have you ever seen Wicked as a stage show, Josh?
I have not.
Have you heard any of the music from it?
I've heard snippets.
Okay.
It should. I mean, you would think, considering my background, that I would be all on board with listening to that soundtrack as I did Hamilton. But for some reason, it hasn't really crossed my path in such a way. But I am looking forward to the movie.
hmm
Uh, that way, maybe I can finally check it out.
I think people who like uh I think people who like this as a stage play, they're going to love it. But in terms of why it would be best movie, there's there's so much talent that went into the making of this movie that it's hard for me to believe that it wouldn't walk away with a nomination. It's just, yeah, it'd be really difficult for me to see how it doesn't.
Kind of wish I had thought of adding it to my list, to be honest. Although there is a musical on my list, so
But I
I
mean,
saved
between
a
the
little bit of face.
two of us, I think we actually do a good job of crossing a lot of things off the list. So maybe it's good that
Hmm.
it didn't make your list, because then that leaves something else on your list that probably doesn't make it to mine. So yeah.
Well, I feel fairly confident that between the two of us, we have the 10 nominees on our list, which brings me to my number 4, and this is going to be super fast because I know next to nothing about this movie, and I really I don't know how to expand on it. So I'm just going to start reading names, and I think you'll get a pretty clear understanding as to why I think this is going to be best picture.
Okay.
So here we go. Dustin Hoffman, Jason Schwartzman,
Hmm.
Aubrey Plaza, Giancarlo Esposito, Adam Driver.
Oh, Adam
And just
Driver.
for the sake of brevity, written, produced, and directed by Francis Ford Coppola.
Oh, yeah, that's kind of like an instant. Uh, you're just considered because of your name. Nobody who has a wine, a vintage wine company, and also makes movies cannot be nominated. I think that's a law now. Pretty sure.
Quite possibly. The film I'm talking about is called Megalopolis. What
Oh,
is it
right.
about? I Here's the premise. An accident destroys a decaying metropolis called New Rome. Caesar Catalina, an idealist architect with the power to control time, aims to rebuild it as a sustainable utopia, while his opposition, corrupt Mayor Franklin Cicero, remains committed to a regressive status quo. Torn between them is Franklin's socialite daughter and Caesar's love interest, Julia, who, tired of the influence she inherited, searches for her life's meaning. It's like, yeah, yeah, this is definitely going to be nominated for Best Picture.
So, and this movie, I do know a tiny bit about this movie, not a major ton, but I know enough about it to say that it's basically like, boy, I hate to say it this way because like I'm not saying that that's how this kind of came together, but everybody loves to do a Rome movie. I feel like this is just sort of a weird movie making rite of passage, and this was sort of a way to make a Rome movie uh without it actually being Rome. And it's kind of genius. Apparently this was something that came up as an idea for Coppola back in 1977. So he's been working on this for a long time, or working on the idea for a long time, and yeah, yeah, the, it could this could be really interesting. We'll see, but it's a sci-fi drama, so that should give you a little bit of I don't know, a glean on where the story might go. Right? It's definitely a sci-fi in nature.
I think it's going to be one of those really good utilizations of sci-fi as commentary on the world,
Right.
as sci-fi is, um, and it's going to, I feel, not be too on the nose, and there's actually going to be some thought put into structure and characters and things like that, because it seems over the last couple of years, um, Don't Look Up comes to mind immediately. It's the messaging has been less subtle. In fact, no subtlety. People have just stopped trying to be subtle with the messaging, and sometimes it's called for. People need to be slapped in the face with the reality through a sci-fi lens. But I think the best storytelling leaves you wondering not what the message is, but uh, how exactly it's interpreted.
Hmm.
Because of course, it's like Star Trek. There's a lot of different ways it can be taken. There is a right answer, but because it's not completely holding your hand through the entire moral of the story, you kind of have room to grow your opinion into the answer rather than get slapped in the face with it. I think this is going to be one of those things where you're left questioning, uh, hopefully, some long held beliefs that are just kind of dumb. That's my hope anyway. uh, and
Which is
it'll be
what good
reaffirming
sci-fi
to
should
come.
do.
Yeah, to really bring the point home, and probably what I should have said from the beginning. Like you said, good sci-fi makes you think, and
Yes.
I think this is going to be one of those movies that does that. That's why Megalopolis is my number 4.
Nice. That I do think that's got a very decent chance. I one thing that I know about this also is that he tried to get this movie financed a number of times and couldn't get financing because of world events. That is, world events seem to mirror or mimic a little too closely what was happening in the film, and it felt like, not the too soon, but like, hey, are people actually going to be interested in this? And basically he just kind of came to this point where he's like, well, if not now, when? Like, when is this? So yeah, so this is definitely a passion project for Coppola, which kind of bodes well, because usually passion projects are they can come out really good. They can come out really good. Which I will say that my number 3 choice is, I feel like it's a lot of people's passion project. I chose Dune 2, um, as a movie just like you did that I definitely think is going to get a Best Picture nod. Um, look, there's a system in sci-fi that sort of has its own hierarchy, and Dune kind of falls into so many different subgenre pieces that it's hard to place it in a correct hierarchy. And somehow they managed to do it fairly well. Um Most of the reason though that I think that Dune 2 will get a Best Picture nod is it sort of casts Paul as as the kind of hero that Hollywood loves so much. They just fawn over this particular character archetype. And I mean, the cinema does not hurt. It's absolutely a beautiful, beautiful film. From an adaptation standpoint, it's a little bit oversimplified for me, and I get why. I mean, it's it's hard. This is a hard movie to make an adaptation of. Um, but, I always go back to The Lord of the Rings and say that also had to have been an extremely difficult adaptation, and somehow they managed it. And yeah, Dune has its own unique sort of challenges, but it's a gorgeous movie. It's so well acted, and there is so much happening in Dune 2 with character arcs that are really tragic, and that sort of all begin to create the crescendo that I think is sort of where Dune will eventually land. Also, the other thing that I think, the reason that I think that it will get a Best Picture nod is Dune has such a weird sort of, not, I don't want to say following, but people like Dune for so many different reasons. Um, because of the sort of like lessons in hubris, because of the sort of direct, hey, here's what capitalist imperialism does, and here are systems that when they fall apart, here's how they fall apart. It also has like resistance people, and it just sort of hits like a lot of different people's, yeah, I like it for this reason or I like it for that reason. So I really think that Dune 2 will definitely grab a Best Picture nod. Um and the movie that kind of comes above this one in my number 2 spot, not because I think it's more or less likely to get a Best Picture nod, but when I get to talk about that one, it reminds me a lot of Dune 2, and yet it has a serious and major flaw, which Dune 2 does not have. So we'll get to that in a minute. But yeah, that's my number three pick, Dune 2.
I think that's one of the safest choices that we both made.
Yeah, I do too. Well, no. The safest choice on my list is actually in my number one spot.
Oh,
Uh, yeah, I just I don't. There's no way that this movie can't get Best Picture nod. Just no way.
well, I wouldn't be surprised if it was my number three that you're talking about, because my number three seems like a pretty obvious candidate for Best Picture next year.
Okay.
Even though I've seen nothing about it, but it is releasing at the right time. It is got the it's got the lineage. It's got the pedigree. I'm talking, of course, of Gladiator 2.
Mm-hmm.
It is, you know, directed by Ridley Scott. There's a guy that's no stranger to award nominated films. And it's a sequel of,
Right.
well, one of the best movies, and Gladiator. I don't even really know what the entire premise is.
Well, you're in luck because that's my number one choice, and I've got tons to say about it, and I know tons about this movie and what it's about. So you're in luck.
So I called it.
You'll get to hear me narrate all about it.
Excellent, excellent. So then I'll just leave it at that. My number three is Gladiator 2. Um, wish I could say more, but we're going to hear more, so it's all good. Gladiator
That
2
is
is
a
my number
very safe
three.
choice. That's a super safe choice.
So when we're at your number two, what is your number two?
All right, my number two is, and I went back and forth on this because I actually don't know if, I think it is worthy of an Academy nod. I don't know if it will get one though. I think this was more wishful thinking on my part. I chose Furiosa, same way that you did in your bottom five. Um, I I tend to think that, see, my problem with Furiosa is from a story deconstruction standpoint, it sucked. It just sucked. It was not a good narrative. I all the pieces together could have been something amazing. A- And I say that, but at the same time, there is brilliance in this film. It is absolutely, I think it would be hard for the Academy to look at this movie and not think that it deserved something far better than just, a nod for some kind of technical award. Because it truly altogether is just, it's kind of astounding. Um but I also, the reason I go back and forth on it is because I don't know if this if what they will look at is the overall narrative and whether that was strong enough to carry the movie. So, and I won't give spoilers about this because this literally just came out on streaming. Um, but it didn't make me happy. It was definitely worth seeing because it's gorgeous. And the action sequences are, especially when you know how much practical effects went into it, the action sequences are unbelievably, like, it's hard to imagine how they did some of those things. Um and yet I felt almost as if the grandeur of the film sucked all of the life out of the actual story. And it kind of made me sad. I wanted to love this movie so much more than I could. Don't get me wrong. I think George Miller is absolutely, he's brilliant. The man is a genius when it comes to cinematography. But narratively, I don't know if this movie had what it took to be a worthy contender in the Mad Max, kind of universe of films, but I do think it has everything that it needs in order to be considered for Best Picture. So Furiosa gets my number two.
It's funny because we do have some similar picks. There's some crossover.
Right.
My number two is a crossover with something you have, and it it is musical. I did mention that I have a musical on the list. It is a musical.
Mm-hmm.
So my number two is well, it's Joker, Folie à Deux.
Mm-hmm. I had a feeling that would be on your list.
I, with as much as I hear about this movie, which is not a whole lot, by the way, it's not a ton, but just hearing Todd Phillips talking about how the performances in this film are just on this crazy next level. Like Joaquin Phoenix, he mentions is just amazing,
Mm-hmm.
and then he says, like in the same breath, Lady Gaga keeps up with him. She doesn't just keep up with him. She's right there giving a performance of a lifetime.
Nice.
And then Brendan Gleeson, one of my like low key favorite actors ever. It's like every time you see him, he just does this amazing job. And I have built this anticipation for this movie that I know a lot of comic book fans are not. Um, and I will be the first to say that when the first Joker movie came out, I was like, oh, this is like Scorsese love letter, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I had a hard time having it stand on its own
Hmm.
because of all of the different places that it was like pulling inspiration. Sometimes indirectly, sometimes very directly. And then there was also the mindset I had that, if you took all of the DC property stuff out of this, it would still be the same movie. And for a while, for quite a long while, I didn't know whether that made it better, that it could that it didn't even need any of the Joker stuff. It could have just been Guy as clown. Um, you certainly didn't need any of the Wayne family stuff. That you could have changed everything, taken everything away Batman related, and it still would have been the exact same movie.
Right.
Now I'm hoping, you know what? I was gonna say I'm hoping that it leans into the comics a little more. I don't think I do actually. Having time to think about this, I'm like, I don't know what I want this to be except good. I want it to be great,
Yeah.
especially since it has all of the elements to be so much more than what it is on paper. And I'm hoping to be blown away. But with that being said, it's got the elements of a best picture. Um, it's releasing at a good time to be considered for best picture, and that's why it made my list at number two. My number two is the second Joker movie.
Nice. Um. Okay. My number one is Gladiator, obviously. And uh Okay, let me sort of set the stage. So Ridley Scott, I think from the time that he actually finished Gladiator, really wanted to create Gladiator 2 somewhere in the back of his mind. Like he knew that this was something that he would do. And I think it took a long time for him to sort of come around to how this could work. Um, and especially since, basically you killed off the main character at the end of the movie. So where do you go from here? Well, I'll tell you where you go from here. You take Lucius, who is the new emperor, who loves the games, and you put him in a role of, quasi historical accuracy. And you recreate the gladiator environment, but you do all the things that you wanted to do, like all the stuff that we saw on the behind the scenes stuff for Gladiator 1 that they sort of couldn't do but really wanted to, like the ships in the Colosseum, which actually wasn't, yeah, there's a whole other thing with this, but um also the wild animals that they wanted to do way more of, like rhinoceri and all kinds of stuff like that. Well, Hollywood said, "Sure, big budget, you go ahead. You give us that, big market." And we sort of hit it just at the right time because fantasy epics are definitely back. Now, Gladiator's not really a fantasy epic, but for all intents and purposes, it probably should be. Yeah, it's based on historical information, but, it's really it's not historical. Um And what eventually is going to happen here, which happened in Gladiator, is sort of the same outcome where we're going to have the the Christ-like hero who ultimately sacrifices and gives up lots in order to for the greater good. And Hollywood absolutely loves that with a passion. It is just one of those things that is an instant draw. But part of the other reason that I think that this movie is really going to make a Best Picture nomination is if you've seen anything from the behind the scenes stills to the kind of on set rolling production takes, the grand scale of this is so massive that it's hard to imagine it could be ignored. It is just an absolutely sprawling film. More sprawling than Furiosa in a way, which says a lot. Um, World building wise, we're all very familiar with the Gladiator world. We if we saw Gladiator, you know what it's about. But they have bumped everything up, like to 10, and really, I think, captured the kind of over the top glitz that ancient Rome had to offer at the time, while maintaining this sense of gritty, awful politics. And I just feel like this is exactly the kind of movie that almost always makes a Best Picture nod. I'm actually really hyped for it. This is one of the few movies that I really want to see in the theater. Like I would not want to wait for this movie to come out on my TV. I absolutely need to have a big experience because it is larger than life, just sort of in its inception. Um, and I think it's going to be definitely worth it. But yeah, um, I feel like this is definitely going to be a really big movie. I think it's also going to be one of the bigger movies in terms of box office attendance also. There's the nostalgia piece for everybody that saw Gladiator and loves Russell Crowe in that role, and then there's going to be all the new sort of people that maybe they didn't see Gladiator, or maybe they just don't know a lot about it, but are very invested in the sword and sandals kind of genre. And like I said, it feels very much like a fantasy epic. So I think it's going to do really well. So that's my number one choice.
Yeah, it's gonna be pretty hard to not nominate that for Best Picture. I think.
It'd be hard to
Uh,
ignore it, I think.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Well, I guess we're at my number one,
I think we are.
and you're gonna laugh, but
Oh boy. Huh?
just no, I don't know of any Kevin Smith movies being released this year, so you guys got lucky
Okay.
this time. But there is a movie that did come out, and it did proceed to do incredibly well box office wise, but it's also one of those movies that I think might be on a level that takes it away from the category that it's probably going to win, and at least have it recognized in the best picture, especially since, like you mentioned before, this pickings are rather limited this year.
Right.
So maybe just to say, hey, we need 10 pictures, and this one was really good, so let's nominate this one. The movie I'm talking about is Inside Out 2.
Now, see, I'm conflicted on that because I think that that will definitely get a best animated, but I
Oh, for
don't know if
sure.
that could do. I don't know if it could do best picture. I don't know.
I wasn't sure at first either, because after all, that the best animated happens for a reason, right? There's a reason that exists, and there's a reason why they, sort of separated those. By the way, for those of you keeping track at home, I will go on the record once again to saying as Avatar should only be nominated for Best Animated Film, because that's what it is. It's an
Yeah.
animated movie. I said it. But Inside Out 2, I think it has the legs, it has the box office, although not always a factor, but it has the legs to carry a nomination because of the emotional aspect. And I don't just mean the emotions in the movie, but I mean the fact that it is kind of back to form for Pixar,
Hmm.
and really good really good movies that are sort of cross generational. They have the ability to affect people of all sorts of different ages and backgrounds, and kind of hits on all the four quadrants. That's why movies make a ton of money. And it's not always because some group of people is like, I'm going to see this movie 27 times,
Mm.
even though we're in an era where that is just not necessary anymore. But good on you for spending all that money, I guess. No, Inside Out 2, having only seen the first one, by the way, I haven't seen the second one yet. But based on its history, based on its reviews, based on things that are almost indescribable, the X factor, so to speak. I think it has an outside chance of claiming like a number 9 or number 10 spot in the Best Picture category. Uh, is it a safe bet? No. Uh, and maybe the smart money would have been to pick a Wicked or something of that nature, but I didn't want to end my list uh, with everybody going, yeah, that makes sense. I want people talking about it like, could it? So that's where my head was at when I picked Inside Out 2. And I do hope to see it soon. Just, my kids don't always want to go out to the movies, and I do feel a little weird about going to see Pixar film by myself. Uh, it is what it is. What can I say? With that being said, Inside Out 2 is my number one for possible Best Picture nominee in 2025. And that does it. That wraps up the list. Do you have any thoughts on Inside Out 2 before we recap and get our next assignment?
I don't know a whole lot about Inside Out 2. I sort of feel like maybe if any movie was gonna have gotten Best Picture nom and it didn't, and so that's why I think I don't know if it's got a chance. I would have said Turning Red would have been like yeah, that because it's just got everything in it that is usually a part of that. One movie that I could possibly see, maybe. No, no, no. I no. I think these are. I think these are animated. I just. I feel like. I feel like the Academy has really locked down the category of Best Picture, and green screen aside, really kind of excluded a lot of movies out of Best Picture by creating all of these other, yeah, but we've got this category and we've got this category. And, for that reason, it seems like some movies that maybe really are very deserving of a Best Picture nom don't get them, because they end up in different categories. I don't know. It doesn't always sit well with me, but that's where we are.
Godzilla minus one should have been nominated for Best Picture this year.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
I stand by that.
Also, just, as an aside, and this is just an aside, okay, because this has nothing to do with, there's no way that this movie is ever going to get anything other than some technical awards. I think it could actually get some technical awards. Um, the new movie, the Godzilla King Kong movie, I had the opportunity to watch this movie, and I love it. I mean, it's Godzilla, it's King Kong, dude, it's great. But don't watch that movie and think that it's going to be about Godzilla versus King Kong, because it's not. It absolutely is not. It is definitely world building, and it's great, and it definitely adds to the Monarch universe uh with the kaiju, and I do love that. I feel like that's a great sort of AU for Godzilla, but it definitely is about world building with Monarch and not a classic Godzilla versus Kong or Kong and Godzilla. I mean, there's Mothra's even in this, and it's hard to even identify how Mothra fits in to all of this. So I love it, but yeah, wow. That I wish that that was much 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 better, because I really wish that a big monster movie could get a Best Picture nod. That would be so amazing, but it didn't.
No, didn't even get Best Foreign Film,
No,
a nomination for that.
sad. It was very sad. Well, I'll recap my films, and then you can recap your films, and then I'll give us some homework for next week.
Sounds good.
Okay, so my number 10 is The Beekeeper. My number 9 is Cabrini. My number 8 is the Bob Marley One Love biopic. My number 7 is Fly Me to the Moon. My number 6 is Joker, Folie à Deux. My number 5 is Reagan. My number 4 is Wicked. My number 3 is Dune 2. Number 2, Furiosa. And number 1, Gladiator 2.
My number 10 is The Piano Lesson. My number 9 is Queer. My number 8 is The Nickel Boys. My number 7 is Furiosa. My number 6 is Dune 2. My number 5 is Nosferatu. And my number 4 is Megalopolis. I love saying that, Megalopolis. Uh, number 3, Gladiator 2. My number 2 is Joker Foliadu. I don't know if I'm saying that right.
Yeah, that's close.
My number 1 is Inside Out 2. I'm just now realizing like 1, 2, 3, 4. Like half of my movies are like sequels. Sorry.
Not bad.
I don't know why. I just noticed that. But yeah, that's my list. Jen, what is our homework?
Okay, so this is going to be a little bit different, and I'll let you interpret this the way that you like, but ask questions if you feel you need to. So, our homework for next week is to create a list of our favorite movies without any humans in them. No humans. So, it could be robots, could be animals, could be trees, could be whatever. That's our job. Zero humans.
No humans.
Right.
Do people from New Jersey count as humans?
They do in
Crap.
most places. Yeah. Yeah. And in New Jersey, I think they count twice.
Uh,
So there's that.
okay.
So
I
as an
guess.
example, not that this is I hope this doesn't interrupt like your list or anything, but as an example, we could use the movie Cars because even though the cars are clearly supposed to depict human beings, they're still cars. They're not human. We could also use a movie like Trolls because Trolls has no humans in it either. So things like that. Uh Anthropomorphic is fine, but just no humans.
No human. Now, is that humans in major roles, or is this like
No,
strictly where humans don't exist?
no humans. There's just no humans that exist.
Okay. Wow. This is going to be an interesting dive into my letterboxed film list because that's where I keep track of all the movies that I watch.
Mm-hmm.
Letterboxed. Now, one more question.
Yes.
Um, just say, for the sake of argument, there's a. You know what? I'm just going to say it. Star Wars. Star Wars. There are no humans, since humans are Earthlings, but they are human-esque.
No, they're humanoid, so that would not count. If
So
the
no
whole movie
humanoids.
was just about R2D2 and the Jawas, then yeah, maybe that would work. But no, can't go there.
So if there was, again, for the sake of argument, a Star Trek movie that had only Vulcans in it, it would still be humanoid. So therefore,
Yeah, but if it was a movie only about tribbles, then I would say absolutely.
okay,
It's the Tribble
okay,
movie.
I got it. Okay, I understand the parameters now.
It
Um,
it, it it'll be fun. It's gonna be fun. I know it's gonna be fun.
it's certainly going to be interesting because I'm
So
wow.
a movie that like would be disqualified, even though most of the movie is not about humans, but it would still be disqualified because there are humans in it, would be like Wally. Most of the movie is not about humans. Well, I mean, in a tangential way, maybe, but there are actual humans in Wally, so that doesn't work.
And they aren't even like major characters either. So
Right. So
that Wally example is very good.
it requires a little bit of thinking to get into the, oh yeah, wait a minute, there are actually people in there.
Okay, this might be the first time where I'm like, I other than the sort of examples named, um, I'm having a hard time coming up with, it's like I don't immediately have anything come to mind.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow, that's super interesting. I have a ton.
This is going to be no humans. That's none. I got plenty where the main characters are all like non-human, but in the background there's like people. So yeah, I'm gonna need some time to think about this one. And you gave us a pretty interesting assignment, and quite frankly, I'm a little upset I didn't think of it.
This will be interesting because I think if you really think about it, there are plenty of movies that fall into this category, but it really does require a bit of like extra thinking to get
Yeah,
through the ones that are, oh yeah, no, wait a minute, there's actual people in there.
yeah.
But trust me, there are a lot of these movies.
Well, I am literally going to have to go through close to 3,000 movies to.
Oh boy, yeah, that does sound like a lot. Yeah.
But easy to keep track of at letterboxd.com.
There you go.
Man, with so much plugging that we do. But it's a great site, though. You should really check it out. Anyway, yeah, Jen, I know that you have some sort of presence online, and you use that to tell people how to make food based on stuff.
I
Could you elaborate
do.
on that?
I absolutely do. I have a website called moviesandmeals.com, and if you head over there, I guarantee you'll find some silly recipe that will pair nicely with something that you want to watch tonight. I apologize profusely for not being more updated in my content, but I promise that we are working on it. Being in the kitchen has not been a high priority for us, but we are actually thinking and planning new stuff. So it's out there. It's out there. And especially if you like horror movies, we got a lot of horror movie recipes. So yeah, join us over at moviesandmeals.com. And how about you, Josh? Where can we find everything that there is to know about Wadco Media?
Oh, I am so glad you asked, because if you want to know more about Wadco Media and all of the things that we do, you can go to wadcomedia.com. And that way you'll find all of the links. Yeah, I'm just going to give you that one website to give you all the links to the social medias and all of the relevant things, like where to find the podcast. Or, you know what? We actually produce physical media.
Mm.
Hold on. I don't like the way that sounded. I can do it better. We produce
physical media.
Yeah, that was not the voice I was expecting, but
Okay, that was great.
physical media in the form of a zine called School Paper, where it's all about the music scene, mostly in Northeast Florida, Jacksonville, Florida, and so far 2 issues released. People seem to dig it, and you know what? If you're in the area, I might even start a mailing list if you're so interested. Just make sure that you find a way to shoot me a message on any of our cool places that you find at wadcomedia.com. If you want to see some interesting pictures, there's my Instagram, where I take pictures of these musical people. And if you want to listen to the podcast, you find that stuff at wadcomedia.com. It's all there, I think. I don't know. I'm assuming so. And also, there's a Patreon, but yeah, I ignore that. You should probably ignore that too. And so if you want to throw a couple dollars at the cause, then I suggest you go to the merch place, where we have like t-shirts and koozies and whatnot. That way, if you feel like we are doing a good enough job to earn your money, then maybe you should get something for that hard-earned money in the form of a T-shirt or a koozie. That's just my 2 cents, but feel free to just send money if you want. That's fine. Anyway,
We never turn that away.
never. With all that being said, I want to thank you all for joining us here for 10 to 1, the internet's favorite movie centric list making podcast. And really, I guess there's only one thing left to do.
I can't imagine what that is. What is it, Josh?
Say goodnight, Jen.
Good night, Jen.